The following is a Game of Thrones 15th anniversary special brought to you by your friends at Scandal Sheet and Thad Helsley Media.
Hello, listeners. We have a huge treat for you today as we are recording live from Titanic Studios just outside of Belfast in Northern Ireland. Now, this is the actual set of the phenomenal hit TV series Game of Thrones, now filming in its 4th season. As you can imagine, things are crazy around here, but I've been able to get a few minutes with the first assistant director of the series, Anuradha. Ms. Anuradha, over here. Thank you for giving us a few minutes.
Sure, no problem. But I'm still working and there may be the occasional interruption. Is that okay?
Oh, of course. Now...
Hey, White Walker guy, can't you read a sign? You're supposed to be over the graveyard trench. Now get your wrinkly ass over there pronto. They've got fruit smoothies for everyone. Sorry about that. Do you see what I have to put up with on this set? Like, all these extras are total morons.
Yeah, it looks very difficult.
You think? Where do they recruit these guys from anyway? Jeez.
Right, so Anuradha, our listeners would love to get a sense of what the first assistant director on a show this large and epic actually does.
Sure, so the directors... Hey, ass for brains! Move that truck out of my shot, asshole, or I'll move you to the janitorial crew. Capiche? Sorry about that. Where were we?
Your job as first assistant director?
Oh, right. So the main director, like Miguel or Neil, work with the top cast members and the camera crew to get the main dialogue shots, but I do everything else. All the background action, large and small, the extras, the armies, the zombies, you name it.
Well, that must be a huge job.
Yeah, it's a tad stressful at times, but the worst are... the fucking dragons!
Those look like actual dragons. I thought they were supposed to be CGI. Computer generated? That's what the acronym means, right?
Right. That's what everybody thinks. People are always posting on social media. The CGI of the dragons in Thrones is so fakey. I could do better on my cell phone with Instagram. All those kids are boneheads, and they can kiss my ass. These are real living fire-breathing dragons, and you are a rare media person that gets to witness them. Hey boys, shut it, will ya? We have a dialogue scene coming up. Now go eat all those nice living goats we brought you. These bitches are gonna be the end of me.
Where did you possibly find real dragons? I thought they were only mythical.
Well, we gotta have a little mystery left in the movie business, am I right?
Oh my God, what's that awful smell?
Tell me about it. Each of these dragons weigh around 34 tons each. That's about 68,000 pounds. So when they poop, it's literally a mountain of shit.
How do you stand the smell?
Honestly, I can't. I keep trying to get a transfer to Westworld, Veep, or other shows, but HBO keeps turning me down. And you know what? My mom wanted me to be an accountant.
True crime.
Sex.
Political conspiracy.
Celebrity gossip.
Murder.
UFOs.
Crooked officials.
The occult. Assassination.
Courtroom drama. Rape.
Corporate scams. Scandal Sheets.
Hello, everyone. My name is Thad Helsley, and welcome to Scandal Sheets. And today, we are both celebrating and investigating the most successful literary and television franchise in history, commonly referred to collectively as the Game of Thrones. Now, the franchise is flying as high as ever on Dragonback, but all may not be well in Westeros or in the hallowed halls of Warner Brothers HBO, which may soon be acquired by evil corporate pretenders to the Iron Hollywood throne. And to help us pry open the dungeon doors on this topic, I am joined by the mother of both dragons and podcasts, my co-host, Anuradha. Anuradha, how's it going?
I was going to say something funny in what's that language that Daenerys speaks?
Valerian, High Valerian.
Valerian.
Yeah.
Dragas. I forgot what it is.
Dracarys?
No, Dragas. I think that's what it
Okay,
is.
okay.
Or is it like Drakas?
Dracarys is what she says when she's
Dracarys.
ordering the dragon to burn somebody.
See, you got the word right, but I
Oh.
think I have to go right.
Well, I did a little bit of rewatching
Dracarys.
so I could catch up. I don't know as much as Jim. But,
You have to say it in like a gusto kind of fashion. Dracarys. Anyways, hi everybody.
Hi, Anna.
If I seem very peppy, it's because I have a guest with me today.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's it's happy hour. It's Friday night.
Happy hour. Woo!
And we are also joined by my very longtime friend and sometimes business partner, Jim Maurer. I like to call him the guy that knows everything about everything. Welcome back to the pod, Jim.
Woo!
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jim, I think this is your third appearance here on Scandal Sheet. So I hope it hasn't significantly damaged your reputation with your neighbors, colleagues, or family members.
No, not at all. None of them watch it or listen to it anyway. So,
well, I guess that shows you're doing your part in promoting your own episodes. In previous episodes, we summarized your lengthy resume, but is there anything new you want to plug today?
no, just that, I'm not at all an expert on the whole Game of Thrones universe. I know there are people that know a ton of stuff. They've read all the books at least once. They go to Comic-Con, whatever. They've personally been to George Martin's for dinner. I'm just a fan of the show. And, I'm here to add my perspective. I've got my Maester chains on, so.
Nice. That's nice. Yeah, you look like a maester. I know you don't go to Comic-Con or whatever, but you're the most knowledgeable, you're the biggest fan I know of the show. And we've watched a few episodes together, actually. And you knew everything. You always seem to know everything. So that's why I invited you to jump in here.
No, it's fun to talk about. I'm glad to be here. It's an interesting show to deconstruct and dissect and to consider. So it's a great vehicle.
Okay, cool. So this is the 15th anniversary of the most viewed TV show in history, Game of Thrones. So that's one thing. But then in January of this year, HBO had another huge hit in the same franchise universe with the prequel spinoff, Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And then in a few weeks, HBO is premiering season 3 of the much anticipated House of the Dragon, which is also a prequel that goes back and started after Game of Thrones concluded. And so, the girls and boys at HBO are having a very good year, with the exception of the takeover of their country, where probably half of them will lose their cushy jobs. But we'll get to that. I wanted to ask you guys, started with you, Anya, what is your relationship with the Game of Thrones universe? Either the books, TV shows, or the mini video games?
I feel like, so I liked Game of Thrones, except the last season. We're not going to talk about how shady that was.
Talk about that.
But I really liked the show, and I felt like I always was very, very connected to the Targaryens, and then just the dragons and that whole world, because I've always been obsessed with dragons and that kind of thing. Harry Potter has dragons, all that stuff. So I've always been obsessed. So that's why I kind of gravitated more towards that. And then, the Starks have wolves and stuff. So I always gravitated. I always thought it was a really cool concept, just like the whole aspect of so many different things in it. Zombies, fantasy, and, romance, incest, if you're into it. Just kidding. It's just really good. It was a very good. Yeah,
Torture. Did you identify with Daenerys, the queen, or?
For sure.
Because she's like a strong-willed woman like you, and ambitious and blah blah blah.
She's she's very strong. She's very empowered. She was someone who was underestimated, and that basically made her, that basically gave her fire, pun intended. So it was really, I just really connected with her character. I also connect with I also connect with Arya a little bit too, but I really connected with her because she was someone who like literally, was like, nope, I'm not gonna be my brother's sidekick. I'm going to be the person, so I absolutely loved that whole character. I don't know what the hell they did later on in the show, but what her core belief was, who she was in the core, was like someone I really connected with.
I mean, Jim, you've already mentioned, your relationship to the show, and I'm sorry to keep making you the expert every time we invite you on the pod, but you're just the smart one. So what are we going to do? Most fans of the original HBO series are probably unaware that the series is based on 5 very successful books that came out a decade and a half before the HBO series. And the author, George R.R. Martin, was clearly not recognized as a genius, in his early 20s, like Coppola or Spielberg or Lucas or Hemingway or something. I mean, he had a bunch of crummy jobs and he didn't really get on the radar screen until he actually published the first Game of Thrones book at age 47, right? Long time coming. So, and then the show didn't come out until he was already 63. So there's hope for me yet. So, Jim, can you tell us about his early career?
Yeah, I mean, so going way back, he was born in 1948 in New Jersey. He's a Jersey boy.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It's George R.R. Martin, George Raymond Richard Martin. Richard is his confirmation name, which is sort of interesting. Catholics would understand that.
Yep.
When you get confirmed, you pick a saint and you can adopt. And so your full Christian name actually incorporates your confirmation name. Nobody really actually uses their confirmation name, but he does. He's got the Raymond Richard in there. So Richard is his confirmation name. So it's kind of interesting. It kind of maybe gives you a little bit of a perspective on his Roman Catholic upbringing. Anyway, so eventually he moved to Santa Fe. He graduated from Northwestern, Medill School of Journalism. It's one of the best journalism schools in the country. He said his early influences include Stan Lee. So that's kind of interesting, along with obviously Lord of the
from Marvel Comics and been in Spider-Man and a lot of other things, right?
Probably, like I said, I'm not a big superhero kind of guy, but yeah, Stan Lee seems to be like the god of all Marvel Comics.
Okay, got
it. He started in middle school writing fantasies for other kids in his neighborhood until he scared them so badly that they made him stop because he was giving all the little kids in the neighborhood nightmares. He sold his first science fiction story in 1970 at the age of 21, and then he started writing a series of novels. You might remember in the mid to late 70s, that was when Star Wars came out. So there was a lot of activity around fantasy, science fiction, fantasy, and stuff like that. He was working at the time as an English teacher at Clark College in Dubuque, Iowa, and he was also working and earning money by organizing chess tournaments. So he's a pretty good chess player. I don't know what his rating is, but he wasn't really competitive, but he was sort of piecing together those jobs. And finally, he kind of quit all of that and moved to Santa Fe, where he lived alone for like 3 years. At about the time he moved to Santa Fe, he got divorced from his first wife. And so he was literally by himself. And that's when I think a lot of his writing started to take off. He ended up getting calls from Hollywood. He wrote for The Twilight Zone. He consulted on the revival in the late 70s of The Twilight Zone. He wrote some stuff for a fantasy series, which I don't remember at all, called The Beauty and the Beast. Not the movie, but some sort of a...
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it had Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2 in it. Was the Beauty. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I used to watch that in Kenya.
Oh, man, her hair was like it was like so 80s or whatever, like blow dried and stuff.
That's cool.
It was very weird.
Oh, my goodness.
So he had sort of his toe in Hollywood and in production, but he had gotten frustrated by, the limitation of television production. He had these big ideas. Obviously, if you looking back now on Game of Thrones, he has these pretty big ideas that would be pretty expensive to produce. Nobody was really willing to do that. So he left all of that behind and started focusing again on long form novels. And so in 1996, as you said, the first installment of the Song of Ice. So the whole series is called The Song of Ice and Fire. The first installment was Game of Thrones that came out in 96. 2 years later, the next one came out, Clash of the Kings.
Yeah.
2 years later, in 2000, Storm of the Swords. And then 4 or 5 years later, A Feast for the Crown came out. That was a New York Times bestseller. So now he's made the bestseller list in 2005 with the fourth installment. The fifth installment came out in 2011, A Dance with Dragons, and that was also a Times bestseller and an international bestseller. And then again, that was like the last installment that he wrote was in 2011 in that fifth series. The other thing that I thought was interesting is in an interview in 2014, he said that he still writes using WordStar in an MS-DOS environment. So
oh
that's
my
kind of
God. He's got an 8086 from the late 80s or something, like an IBM. Holy crapola. Oh, okay. Good.
So yeah, so in the, by the time they were thinking about producing Game of Thrones, I guess it was a good time to think about high budget fantasy. Star Wars was made in the late 70s, but then Lord of the Rings got made. I'm blanking. Who was the guy?
2001, Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings in a way nobody ever thought you could.
Right.
And he demonstrated what you could do with CGI technology and stuff like that. And so all of a sudden, the production of the entire, Song of Ice and Fire became feasible. And they were desperate for content. And so whoever it was just really knocking on his door, begging him to work on this project because they were desperate for that sort of content.
That's pretty cool, actually. Oh, so here's the fun fact. So apparently the big fans of George R.R. Martin had a nickname for him. So they used to call him GRRM, which is pronounced germ, rhymes with worm.
One thing, Thad, that I remember is when we were, by way of introduction, you can use this or not, but in senior year in high school, we were assigned to the same team. We had to do a presentation of the Arthurian legends, right?
Oh, was that Nan's class?
Yeah, that was AP English senior year.
Okay.
You and I and some other person, I can't remember his name. The three of us had to present not just T.H. White's Once and Future Thing, Once and Future King or Camelot, but the whole arc and all of the various
Arthur, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And I remember you saying, like, whoever figures out how to do this is going to be great. And Game of Thrones and George R.R. Martin, like, it's not exactly the Arthurian legends, but he figured out how to do it in a way that was just, really innovative. And so I'm as we're walking through this material and talking about it, I'm reminded of those discussions that we had in your parents' basement about the whole arc of the Arthurian legends and how that was such a vast and complex and broad storyline that nobody could ever do it, but maybe Martin did.
Well, yeah, my parents' basement with plenty of say smoke baits products.
But then David Benioff, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we'll just say that, and D.B. Wise, who had done almost nothing at this level at this point, approached Germ with an idea to do an HBO series that they had actually gotten pre-approved. So they believed you couldn't do each book as a single movie because it was too long. So you needed at least 10 hours for each, which is, pretty lengthy. And then in a lengthy lunch meeting, that turned into dinner or drinks. The duo actually convinced Martin that they had actually read his books. No one actually ever talked to him in Hollywood and had ever actually read his books. So that was, obviously a good way to kind of slide in. And they were ready to produce it, faithfully with him having executive producer status and creative approval on everything. So he agreed, and they went ahead and they made a pilot. The only thing is that everyone hated the initial pilot.
Right. Heard that. Yeah.
So, but
Reminds me of our last conversation about Star Trek, right? Where
Very similar,
Yeah,
right? Where they hated the
exactly.
first one, but they gave him a chance for a second one.
Exactly. You know,
Honey,
but they convinced HBO to get a new director and recut it to see if things would, kind of pick up and get better. I'm very curious to see what the initial pilot was. I would definitely want to watch that. But anyways,
There's bootlegs
um,
out there somewhere. I don't know how to find them, but yeah.
I mean, I would love to watch it just to compare. So yeah. So then the new director comes in, and the series finally gets a green light. It was a slow build in ratings, as HBO struggled on how to actually market it. But by the end of the season, it was their top show. So there you go.
Whoa, baby, whoa. Okay, so one of the things you wanted to talk about, Jim, was what are the attributes? Okay, so it became this great show. And of course, it was based on best-selling books, but, nobody in this country reads. So how many people actually read the books? But what made the show so popular? I mean,
Yeah,
you wanted to talk about that. What do you think?
I do. I wanted to just pick up though on what Anurada was saying
Okay.
and sort of expand on that a little bit. So Game of Thrones went on to be the most popular series in HBO's history.
Yeah.
Right. By season 4, it was getting 18.4 million viewers, and it had just beaten out their previously most popular show, which was The Sopranos.
Right.
And by the last season of Game of Thrones, they were getting over 44 million viewers. The series went on to receive almost 59 Primetime Emmy Awards, the most ever by a dramatic series. Now, SNL had received 87 Emmys, but that's over a 50-year
Over 50
history.
years, right.
Yeah.
And it's a different category entirely, a really small one, late night TV.
Exactly.
So 59 Primetime Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Dramatic Series 2015, 2016, 2018, 2019. Peter Dinklage, one of my favorite characters, who
I'm
played
obsessed with
Tyrion,
him.
right?
He's the
Alone was nominated for 8 Emmys and won 4 of those. So yeah, it's a huge success for HBO. And so yeah, now we can talk about why.
Well, yeah, I mean, so why don't you tell us why you think it is so successful, Jim?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I think this is important. It's important to understand when you talk about Game of Thrones. It's like, well, why was it so successful? And maybe later we'll have time to talk about why House of Dragons, shit the bed so badly. Ugh.
In your opinion, I will have the disputing opinion. I'm sorry.
In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a soul to Game of Thrones, right? To the HBO production of that. I'm not going to speak as an expert who's read all the books, but there's a number of things that were, some of which were derivative, but done in a really interesting way. Some of which were purely innovative.
Mhm.
One of the things was the fact that key characters, not randomly, but in very unexpected ways, at very unexpected points in the plot, just get killed off.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
No,
forgot
that's true. I mean, and you made the point in some of your notes. You said, well, it's not just like guys that we love, like Ned Stark, or the couple that kills at the Red Wedding or whatever.
Spoiler alert, people.
Oh yeah. Anybody who hasn't, 50, we gave you 15 years. Spoiler alert. But even the bad guys are unexpectedly killed, like that little motherfucker with the white hair.
Joffrey
yeah.
Baratheon.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Who,
God.
by the way, I actually heard is like the nicest guy ever.
That,
like you meet
yeah,
him.
yeah. He was interviewed in that book I sent you, and like that guy had to go into the witness protection program. He's the nicest guy ever in real life, but
He's so
he
sweet.
quit
Yeah.
acting after that role for like 20 years or 15 years because everybody, he had to just walk around in a ski mask because everybody in the world hated his guts.
Absolutely. Well, that's true too. For I forgot the name of the actress, but the actress that played Cersei Lannister. I mean, their hair was dyed, so you might not recognize her on the street. Thank God. But
Lena something or other. Well,
Yeah.
she's been a good person, she was in 300. Remember that? It's another
Yeah, she's
Greek
fantastic.
thing.
Yeah,
She's been in a lot of stuff. She's a great actress.
So this idea, I forgot the name of the actor who played Ned Stark. It was the same actor who played in Lord of the
Boromir
Rings.
in Lord of the
Yeah.
Fellowship of the Rings. Yeah.
And in that, and he got killed off early in the Fellowship of the Ring too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he is a
People just like
longtime
to kill the poor
actor.
guy.
I mean, everybody loves that guy. I mean, he doesn't always play bad guy. I mean, here he was a good guy, right? And they made it look like this was going to be his show because he was on all the posters. He's sitting on the Game of the Throne, the Iron Throne, and stuff like that. And then they kill him at the end of season 1.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, because like right up to the very end, it's like Braveheart. You're like, look, there's going to be a daring escape here. It's going to be like Pirates of the Caribbean. He's going to get out of this somehow. And then they chop his head off.
Absolutely. And it just reinforces this feeling of the brutality of the universe in which Game of Thrones takes place.
Yeah.
And by projection, our own, right? So that's one thing that was really innovative. I don't know any ongoing series. I mean, maybe since then, some people have played around with that, like White Lotus maybe, but yeah. And so the other thing that distinguishes Game of Thrones is, frankly, the amount of nudity and sex that takes place. And pretty much every episode, maybe not every single one, maybe not 100% of them, but 98% of them, you could be guaranteed to get some nudity and probably full frontal at some point, right, in the episode. And so that was kind of interesting.
Hi, everyone. We'll be right back after this message from the 80sgrid.com, the free 80s music trivia game that you won't want to stop playing. It's always free and no sign up.
80sgrid.com, Madonna, Sade, and Pat Benatar. Every song had a deal. George Michael, Bon Jovi, The Smiths, Culture Club on the radio. 80s Grid brings them all back to life. Come on, let's go. Test your knowledge, feel the beat. A decade that refused to retreat. 80sgrid.com, take a ride. Your favorite icons waiting inside. Big music, big hair and heart. Every artist is art. In Pat Benatar we trust. 80sgrid.com is a must. One more round, one more song. 80sgrid.com where you belong. It's free, it's fun. Play today. 80 It's fun. Play today.
And that's a very, very important point. And Anuradha, I wanted you to comment on this because you, in past episodes, you expressed some very strong feelings about how women are treated in movies. Like we were talking about Judy Garland and The Wizard of Oz and things like that. And you talked about nudity and simulated sex and tobacco use and stuff. Do you want to comment on that? I mean, how did that make you feel? You watched the show, but then, and in that book that I recommended to you guys, Amelia Clark like, dude, they'll fucking make you kick off. It's so fucking gratuitous. I'm going to kick off my clothes all over the place.
Exactly.
And then men do too, but it's like an 80-20, 80%, 20%. The women are doing most of the nudity and simulated sex. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think the aspect is that they know that more guys are going to watch the show than women. You know what I mean?
Just because it's a sword thing.
Yeah, like just, like the violence, action, all those kinds of things.
Okay.
So they do need to appeal to guys more. So I mean, I strictly have a, and Thad, obviously, this. I strictly have a no nudity clause as an actor myself. I won't do it. But like, it's just interesting for me because, I just feel like every time people are like, oh man, viewership is going down, okay, woman over there, take off your clothes. You know what I mean? It's like immediately. So I do like it when it is more equal, where it's like, okay, well, this person, and then now a man, that kind of thing. And they keep it even. Now, obviously, I'm going to use a comparison. It's not even in the same realm. So I know people are going to be like, what the hell? Why has she been bringing this up? But I'm going to use the comparison of, and Just Like That, which is the continuation of Sex and the City, where they show a nude woman, they show a nude man, they show a nude woman, they show a frontal nude man. Like, it's even.
The original series movies. I saw most of the series. I didn't see any of the movies though.
The movies, was kind of like slight nudity here and there.
Because they were a lot older in the movies, right? They were younger.
They were a lot older.
Okay,
but in the show, you see, even in Sex and the City, both are nude. And I feel like that's fair because, we're not living in like the freaking second century anymore where it's just like, oh, well, guys just want to see nude girls. A lot of women would like to see attractive guys nude. You know what I mean? That's why that one movie, I'm just forgetting what it's called. I think it's called like 100 Days or something like that. It's got that very attractive Italian actor Michele Morone in it, and he kidnaps a girl, and like his famous quote is, are you lost, baby girl? He's nude in a lot of the movie, and that appeals to women. So I feel like as long as you keep it equal, you keep it fair, it's fine. But when you start being like, okay, well, only girls, you know what I mean, that's when I'm kind of like, I did like that the woman, I think his name is Oberon or whatever, that the
Oberon.
woman in that culture or that family or whatever, she calls the shots, and I do like that is a little bit more like, even, and it's a little bit more empowering for women. So I think
That was also sort of an exotic culture to the south.
exactly.
I'm not even sure, like that was Dorne, right? Is that
Yeah.
part of the Seven Kingdoms? I think it probably is.
It's
but-
on the other side of the ocean or the sea or whatever. From
yeah,
Westeros,
yeah, it's
right?
pretty far away. It's pretty exotic. I think there's also, I mean, we could talk about whether or not it was gratuitous, whether or not it was important to the plot, whether or not it was aesthetically pleasing. But I think what's interesting is that the show dealt with a lot of misogyny that was inherent, right, in the plot. I mean, it's a feudal culture, so there's all these discussions. Can Daenerys can a woman be king or queen of the Seven Kingdoms? Can Sansa Stark be warden of the North? Right, and like you said, there are strong female characters that float around, but they're always bouncing against these really explicit misogynistic themes that crop up all over the place.
Exactly.
And so I don't know,
Which
maybe
are
in some way
authentically,
the
as you
nudity
said,
flows
authentically
into
part of
that.
the medieval experience, which he's sort of riffing on, right?
Yeah. But that was the magic of showing that these women rise up, and they're the ones who end up calling the shots. They're the ones who end up fighting against, the perceptions. Like, you look at Arya. Oh my God, I freaking love that character. And like you pin her up against her sister, who is just seems very weak. You know what I mean? And even when she's trying to be strong, she's still weak. You know what I mean? Whereas Arya
Well-
from the get-go is fighting against stereotypes, and
Well, they
it-
have two
it,
different arcs, though, don't they? Arya is strong right from the get-go. She's running around with a sword.
Yeah,
Jon
she's
gives-
strong right from the get-go. Now
and
Sansa does
Sansa
grow.
becomes strong with the help
Yeah,
of everybody.
Sansa grows.
By the end. Yeah.
But she's still, in comparison, kind of like, you know what I mean? Whereas Arya from the get-go is like, nope. And the dad sees that. The dad sees that in
Yeah.
her. You know what I mean? And I love that. She just really, I just love that character. And, even, the mother of dragons, like, to fight against the perception of, okay, like a woman can't do this, or you know what I mean? And she just kind of takes over. And the great part about it is that she uses her body and her sexuality, and she makes the because she knows that a man is weak. And so she uses that. And I feel like that was a very powerful that was a very powerful message that maybe not many people got. Maybe some women got it, but you know what I mean? Like,
maybe not explicitly, but it was definitely part of the underlying theme. This,
exactly.
bouncing against these misogynistic tendencies, and like you said, characters like Arya and Sansa and Brienne of Tarth, like these are really strong, and Daenerys, they're strong. But there's also female characters that suck too, right?
Yeah.
So Cersei is kind of pure evil, but even like
She's
Catelyn
complex, though,
Stark,
Jim. She's complex.
she's
But
not
what I was going to
say, like even characters like Catelyn Stark, Ned's, their mother.
Yeah.
She makes so many mistakes in the first season that kind of lead to a lot of the tragedy. She sort of brings a lot of that down on her house herself. And then
She
there's
does,
the
and she
woman in
hated
red.
John.
Oh yeah, the woman in
She
red.
hated
who's-
John, right? Because he was a bastard.
What about John? She
John
hated him,
Snow,
Yeah,
Ned
she
Stark's
hated him.
wife. Yeah.
She hated him. We can get back to that. So there, he complicates things, and he
Yeah.
complicates women, and he complicates, the role of women in this kind of a society. And that's really interesting for anybody, right? I think Brienne is one of my favorite characters.
Fabulous. Yeah. I liked that character
That's
a
the
lot.
7-foot woman, right? Okay.
And so that brings up another probably the characteristic. It might not be the most important, but it's the one that I'm drawn to the most, the one I like to think about the most, which is the way that he complicates this concept of knighthood. Like every other illustration of knighthood up until Game of Thrones, including Lord of the Rings, right? It's pretty straightforward, good versus evil, I'm an honorable guy, whatever. But in Game of Thrones, these knights, whether or not it's Jaime Lannister or Brienne of Tarth or Jorah Mormont or
The Mountain.
even Sandor Clegane, the Hound, right? All of these characters are knights. And what that means on the one hand is they're sworn to uphold a higher standard, defend the weak, support justice. And they all kind of look for that. They all want to do that. And along that path of looking for someone to serve, a cause to fight for, some of them get messed up. Like Jaime gets messed up. He gets pulled into his family politics, right? And so it's a complicated thing. But at the end of the day, these knights and the way that he writes on the plots and the arcs around the knights are really, really some of the most interesting to me. And jumping way ahead, we can come back to this, but that's why Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is going to do better than House of Dragons. But we can come back to that if you like. But I really think that concept of knighthood and the way that he complicates it was really attractive, including as we were starting to talk about Brienne of Tarth.
She was fantastic. Really, really good actor.
Yeah, so Brienne, she started out by really wanting to pledge herself to Remley and be in his king's guard and defend himself. And then, he gets killed. So in a way that she wasn't able to protect him. And then she starts to look for, and then she finds Catelyn Stark and she pledges herself to her. And then Catelyn Stark dies. And then so she just spends the whole first 4 seasons like looking for a cause to dedicate herself. And she finds Arya, and Arya tells her, I don't need you, go away. And she finds Sansa, and Sansa says, I don't need you, go away. But, eventually she does. She comes back and she pledges herself to those girls, especially Sansa. And I just thought that arc, along with like the arc of, say, Sandor Clegane, the Hound, right? He's this rough guy who you think is like on the bad guy side, and he kind of acts like a bad guy. And he kills, in the first episode, he kills that butcher's boy who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Joffrey and Cersei order that butcher's son to be killed. And so Sandor has
killed
to
by
go
the
out.
Hound, right?
Yeah, he has to go out and kill him. And so we're, but that's where his arc starts. But at the end, he's basically, he talks about how he's captured Arya and he's going to take her to her aunt to sell her for ransom. But really, we all know he's protecting her, right? We all know that he's basically her bodyguard, and he's trying to do what's right. And those are the kinds of complex plot elements that all of those knight characters have that I thought was really interesting.
Exactly. Like they end up bonding. You know what I mean? They end up bonding. They end up connecting. You know what I mean? You even look at like Tyrion's friend, the guy who ends up
Bronn.
Yeah, Bronn, and he ends up connecting, with Jaime. And they kind of share that thing. I do feel sad because I feel like Brienne of Tarth, I loved her character. I loved the fact that she dedicated herself. It was always about the person she was serving. She dedicated herself to the person. She was very loyal. And then she fell for Jaime, the first ever selfish decision she made. And it didn't go anywhere. And that made me sad. You know what I mean?
Well, it wasn't consummated, but they had a really interesting relationship, right?
Yeah.
That spanned the whole rest of the series. And it culminated in one of my favorite scenes, which is the night before the pitched battle at Winterfell with the Army of the Dead. Jamie knights her, right?
Yeah.
And so in the way they present that, the way they come
Your
into
favorite
that
episode is in
ceremony-
season 8. Wow. Okay.
What?
That's in season 8.
Is it? It's 7 or 8?
It's like the third to the last episode.
But the way that they came into that, it was completely unexpected. And then, he's like, I can do this. I can make you a knight. You want to be a knight? And she's like, well, yeah. I mean, you can see it in her face, right? As an actress, you can see like, you're just joking with me. But at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, that's all I've ever wanted my whole life.
That was
anyway. So it has that sort of a conclusion. It's not sexually consummated, but they definitely have a relationship.
I think that there was like love there. I genuinely fear there was like love there. I think with Jamie, he was just infatuated with Cersei. There was like an obsession. There was a very strong sexual connection, but there was never any love. I feel like there could have been love between them two. Between him and Brienne of Tar. I genuinely, and I do think she loved him. You know?
Absolutely. And Cersei knew, right? She could tell. There were sparks flying.
There was something, for sure.
Hello, Scandal Sheeters. I'm one of your hosts, Anuradha. I want to ask you a personal favor. We recently launched on Patreon. Patreon is a platform where you can help support artists like us for as little as the price of one Starbucks coffee per month. It's really cool because as a Scandal Sheet subscriber, we can provide you with exclusive bonus content like uncut versions of episodes, transcripts, and bonus episodes. And you get to know Thad and I on a more personal level and stay tuned with all our antics. It's super easy to do. Just go to patreon.com/Scandal Sheet and sign up. It takes only seconds. Patreon is spelled Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Scandal Sheet. You'd really be doing me a favor because Thad owes me money, freaking deadbeat. Thank you, wonderful Scandal Sheeters. Now on with our show.
Why don't we talk about, what everybody loves to talk about when Game of Thrones comes up, which is the fact that Jerm wrote 5 books. And so it seemed like, wow, we got all this content, 5 books, and each of them are like 1,000 pages, so that's going to be 5 seasons and stuff like that. And he had planned for 7 books, right? And he said, well, I'm halfway through. Don't worry. I'm done. Okay. Because when they get to the end of the 5th season, they're not done. But
like, whoops, the dog ate my homework.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, I'm 300 pounds and I'm worth $300 million, and maybe I just don't feel like writing anymore. I don't know what it is. But anyways, he sits down with the 2 guys, the showrunners, who, had been writing the scripts. Mostly, he had written some of the scripts, but he was, I'm told, I only read the first book. I didn't read it. Very, very faithful adaptions. Right, the TV show is a very faithful adaptation of the books. It's just like they just copy and pasted and then took out stuff they didn't like. So, but now they don't have anything, and they go out there to Santa Fe, Jim, and they sit down with him for like 3 full days, and they're just like recording everything on tape and taking notes and saying, "Tell us what's in the last 2 books." Okay, so those 3 seasons that had no book support, 6, 7, and 8. Were, thousands and thousands of words of the plot line. So I know this is what's controversial because there are no actual books. And if the books do ever come out, which seems problematic, right, because he doesn't even want to have a compare. But
why would you write a book after the movie's already come out?
I don't know. Exactly. So, but this is where the controversy starts, right? Because all of a sudden, it's like the Holy Bible stopped here, and now anything you say going forward is going to be these two jokers from HBO. So let's start there. Where do you guys see? And then the big thing was season 8, the last season, and especially the last couple of shows where everybody lost their minds, started their hair on fire. The two showrunners had to go into a witness protection program. They had to go and live in Nigeria underground for years because everybody on planet Earth hated them. So we, discuss. Anurati, you start. You said you hated the last season.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the last season was, pretty rough. I mean, there were certain aspects that I loved. Obviously, Arya, all that thing. You know what I mean? But I just kind of feel like
Should Jon Snow and
Daenerys,
should they have been lovers?
I mean,
they were. Should they have been?
I mean, it's tough because it's like, did they really need to be? Probably not. But then when they finally did, like, I just feel like that
It was
whole
obviously
thing,
George's plan. They would not have deviated that much.
yeah, like that whole thing was weird. And I understand, like, my issue was like with Daenerys, she had strong core values throughout the show. And yeah, she diverted from time to time, like when she decided to freaking hang everybody to teach a lesson, whatever. Okay, yeah, she diverted from it from time to time. But to completely change, and I understand it's because they're trying to connect her to the Mad King, but to completely change and just have her be like this crazy bitch who's like, kneel before me, and then she just goes crazy. And then to have John King, who has always had a pretty strong moral compass, besides
exactly. I mean, that's his failing is that he always does good even when it's stupid.
Moral compass, but there are times where he's let Jon Snow Jr. think for him. We all know that. For the most part, he has had
I don't call him junior, I call him senior.
He's had a pretty strong
everyone.
Moral compass. So to just turn around and then kill her, I mean, you could argue like, yes, his strong moral compass was still there because he knew that she was going to do more damage, and that's why he went against the love of his life and did that. Yes, it can be argued, but I just feel like that was weird. And
not
then the
just
whole
went
thing
against,
with
killed her.
Cersei and all that stuff.
Killed her. He killed her.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. He killed her. So I feel like that was weird. And then the whole thing with like Cersei and Jaime, like, with everything just falling. And then they're like, oh my God, like we're gonna die together because we love each other. Or, we have had sex. We have so many kids together. That whole thing was kind of strange. So I just feel like, and the thing of the matter is I love Arya Stark. I felt like she had to have the last say. She was freaking amazing. But even then, it's like you see like the Night King, you see all that shit for so many seasons and episodes. Like you look at it, it's such a threat. Like, oh my God, how are we gonna kill? Like, how is this gonna happen? Like, it has to be something. And then it's just Arya fucking pouncing and being like, boom. It just seemed very like, oh, that's all that needed to be done. It was just very like, it just felt very flat. You know what I mean? So I was not a fan of the last season. And like, I just feel like a lot of people kind of make fun now and they're just like, yeah, it was not exactly the best, So I think, and, I feel like Jim may disagree. I do think that because the last season was so freaking terrible, that it kind of left people with such a bad taste in their mouth. So when House of Dragons came out, they were kind of like, I don't know about this. Are they going to just shit on this show? Or are they just going to shit this show out too? It just kind of left a kind of a somewhat bad taste. You know what I mean? I do love House of Dragons though. There are some things that I'm not a fan of on that show, but for the most part, I do like House of Dragons. Just saying that.
Jim, you're sitting there with your Benjamin Franklin Constitutional Convention expression.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't love Game of Thrones. That series is pretty extensive. So there's parts of it that I don't like. And the parts that I don't like generally tend to be weighted toward the last few seasons. That's definitely true. I think though it's important to kind of separate what you might have wanted to see happen to these characters that we're also vested in
Yeah.
versus kind of what, I guess I'll use the word, what was like inevitable or
Yeah.
even foreshadowed,
What needed
or
to happen.
what
Yeah.
kind of had to happen to them, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that happened. I would have liked, I was sad when Ned Stark got killed. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a great plot device, but I love that actor. I would have liked to see him act more, right? I was sad when Varys was killed off, right? The advisor, the
The
bald-headed eunuch
bald
advisor.
guy, eunuch guy.
Yeah, I thought that was a great character.
Is
And
it
so
was he the eunuch?
yeah, the
Yeah.
eunuch.
Yeah, and that was like one of the first things where everybody's like, where what's your face kills him. Well, that wasn't the only thing, but that's when she's starting to turn, when she's starting to show her madness and stuff like that, where she's very, very, very vindictive for people who had been her allies and supporters.
Yeah, so it was
So we knew what
and
was
he
coming.
wasn't her
to her.
ally. He was actively, I mean, he objectively was committing treason against her.
Yeah.
Only at the last minute because she was going nuts. Everybody knew she was going nuts.
Yeah, so she was on her way there, and so what I'm saying is, this. I think a lot of people. I'm not going to speak for you. You can on Urata, but I think a lot of people when they say, "Oh, I don't like the last few seasons," yeah, there's some parts of it that go slow, but generally what they're saying is, I don't like what happened to my characters. These are my characters. I really invested in them, and I don't like how they ended up. But that's kind of how they had to end up. The fact that Jon Snow had to kill Daenerys, that harkens all the way back to Jaime Lannister, who was a king's guard, had to kill the Mad King,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you could see that, Daenerys was on a path and that was just inherent in the plot. And when they killed off Lysandria, like, you could tell that was the moment where I'm going to just destroy this city.
That was
And
last straw, right?
That was the
but then
last
she
straw,
destroys the
and-
city, and then she gives this Hitler-esque speech to all the combined armies. We're going to go across the earth and kill everybody.
So
Yeah.
power corrupts,
Yeah.
and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And Game of Thrones keeps coming back to that. I mean, it ends with Bran being the on the Iron Throne, so we don't know what's going to happen to him. But there's just this whole series of people on the Iron Throne that suck. That end up like even people like in House of Dragons, like Viserys, who was very peaceful. He made a lot of really stupid decisions that basically brought down his house.
But see, I love House of Dragons, so I'm going to be your enemies on that one, but we'll get to that. Go ahead.
So my point is that I think, yeah, there are some things that could have been done better, but the overall plot lines that people talk about when they talk about the last couple of seasons, I don't see how else there, like, you can tell me, like, how else do you think it could have ended?
I mean, it's tough, right? Because I feel like maybe somewhere down the line, people wanted to see Jon Snow and Daenerys kind of get married and see like what their family would look like. You know what I mean? So I just kind of feel like some people, and that's when that idealistic, no, but I really want that comes into play, right? Whereas like Jon Snow from the get-go, he's a knight and he needed to go back to that realm. Like he diverted from it, went this, that, whatnot. He needed to kind of go back. The only person who I feel could successfully leave that realm and be okay was Sam, the cute chubby
Sam?
guy. He was fabulous. I love that actor. So I feel like that was, you know what I mean? But at the same time, Daenerys, I felt like, and this is where I feel like as a woman, the danger of the messages, which is, oh, well, don't put a woman in power. She's going to end up going fucking crazy. You know what I mean? And yes, you can argue, well, the Mad King's a man and he went crazy. But that's still looked at as, well, he was a boss ass guy who, was crazy, but he did what, like, they look at it differently when when the woman goes, because it's just kind of like, oh, well, that was expected. She was going to go nuts at some point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just feel like that messaging was a little bit, you know what I mean? I will always love what they did with Arya's role though. From the beginning to the end, she was strong. And actually what I really do feel, which viewers let us know if you want us to have another episode specifically talk about certain themes. I do love the aspect of what they did with the subject of intimacy based on the person's personality and character. Like you see Arya, when did she get intimate? When, it was her choice. When did she? Versus Cersei, how would she use intimacy? You just look at the different characters, the different women, and when they used intimacy and what like how they used it. I just felt was very interesting as well. I know that's a different subject, but
Well,
Well, yeah, Daenerys was like the woman who was queen, who like, oh, any woman in power is either weak or you're a bitch, and she
yeah,
ended up being kind of a terrible. But there, like you said, there's a lot of other female characters that offset that. Arya is one. I think Sansa is another one. She's got a great arc.
she's got a great
And
arc.
she ends up being so strong. She basically,
Sure, she tells the council, "I'm king of the North. You fuckers can have the rest of the country, but I'm
right,
yeah."
we're
And they're all
not going to
like,
be part of
"Okay,
this
okay,
anymore.
okay." So
She seceded. She did
Yes.
what Jefferson Davis and Robert Lee couldn't, right? She
Yes,
seceded for
exactly.
the Seven Kingdoms.
but
Anyway, the point is, like,
Okay.
yeah, you're right. But again, I'd like to understand. I mean, I don't know if we have time, but like, how else could it have ended? And you say, well, maybe John and Daenerys could have gotten. She was his aunt.
Yeah.
You know?
which I
Yeah.
mean, it's fucked up for now, but back then, you know what I mean? Like House of Dragons. This uncle marries the freaking niece. You know
And
what I
that,
mean?
but that, and that's another one of the themes that George Martin pulled in. That was completely, as far as I can tell, innovative. Was this theme of incest, right?
Yeah.
Well,
And so,
and innovative and
lots of
authentic,
bad shit happens because of
authentic
that.
to the period of the Middle Ages, right? Kings, royal families were intermarrying, right? Everybody was a cousin, brother, and sister because they didn't want to be their blood polluted by
Yeah.
common
They
people.
wanted to keep the power within.
Not knowing that, within an immediate family, you could create all sorts of problems, which resulted lots of madnesses. Fucking King George III, who did the American Revolution that we're celebrating in a couple months, went mad.
Yeah.
Totally
The
interbred.
the whole Habsburg dynasty was infected with and so I guess the point is like, yeah, John and Daenerys could have gotten together, but she was his aunt.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was part of the culture, but that's also where a lot of the violence comes from, right? Literal inbreeding, figurative inbreeding, both in House of Dragons and Game of Thrones. That's the thing that causes a lot of trauma and a lot of violence. In the very first episode where Jamie pushes Bran out the window because of, right? So I don't know. I like Daenerys. I like Jon Snow. I don't know if they could have gotten together and not been, what she became.
Well, and let's just say George R.R. Martin. Now, look, we go through all this. I mean, you mentioned that moment, which wasn't that the first episode of the first show, the rewritten pilot, where Jamie Lannister throws Bran out the fucking window? Once he discovers them fucking doggy style, and everybody's like, whoa!
Yeah.
Right? It's like, this is not a usual show. So we know what George does. Okay. And he kills everybody. There was no way Jon Snow and Daenerys were going to walk into the sunset hand in hand with like flower petals flowing down. There was no way. I mean, because his whole mission is destroying sacred tropes in narrative fiction in the genres he loves, which is obviously medieval fiction and stuff like that. And that's why everybody had to die pretty much. I couldn't even believe that he kept Peter Dinklage alive.
Oh my God. If he killed Olma, I would have burned down the screen. I love that actor so much. I thought he was so amazing, so fantastic. And it's like, and that was another theme, right? Someone who you should technically maybe not like, but then you just love them. You know what I
He's one
mean?
of the
Like there was
few
so
good
much.
people in the whole thing that you
He
could
was
say. You say
amazing.
Jon Snow, Dinklage, whatever's here.
But the thing is, like,
Tyrion.
Peter Dinklage, it was different though, because like he was just hated, even though he was part of the family, he was treated like shit.
Because
But
he's a
then he
dwarf.
had this great relationship with Jamie, where Jamie genuinely cared about him.
Yep.
But then Jamie was scared to show care because of fucking Cersei. You know what I mean? I just felt like, and that's why he had to rise above the ranks and be who he is, a great advisor, maybe a little bit manipulative. You know what I mean? So I just feel like you see some of these characters that rise above the ranks. I do genuinely, and I feel like his power came from when Jamie Lannister did throw him out of the window. Bran, like you,
Brienne.
yeah, like it could technically be argued that he became the seer. He became the
The
strong
three-eyed raven.
character because his legs were
No, he
ascending.
says that. There's a scene, again, it's a great scene in one of the last episodes where Jamie goes to apologize to Bran, and Bran basically says, well, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't be who I am now, and
Yeah.
you wouldn't be who you are now.
Exactly. And he becomes like arguably one of the most powerful characters on the show because he sees things that other people don't. You know what I mean? And then you also look, and even though I really do feel like this bitch was fake as hell and she freaking just lied to people to get whatever she wanted, the red, the witch, basically. And she was actually very, very, very old and very unattractive. You know what I mean? But she used her power to trick people and to get what she wanted. You know what I mean? And she did a lot of fucked up shit. And then she did a lot of stuff. I generally think she freaking just lied to that guy because she wanted to sleep with him. Yeah, you gotta have sex with me and then you'll get the Iron Throne. You know what I mean?
I think
that you should start using that.
That's what I would do. Let's call this the end of part one. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Anirada. And more to come, guys. More to come. This is a great conversation. We're so happy to have Jim with us. And all right. See you soon, everybody.
Please follow or subscribe to Scandal Sheet on your favorite pod platform and share it with all your friends. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a shameless, over-the-top rave review on Apple Podcasts especially. That helps us build audience. And we would really appreciate it if you could support us on Patreon, where you can enjoy premium bonus content for less than the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Just go to patreon.com/scandalsheet. Also, we want to hear from you. You can reach us online at Facebook or X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, or TikTok. Or just send us an email to scandalsheetpod@gmail.com. See you next time on Scandal Sheet!
Copyright 2026 Thad Helsley Media, LLC, all rights reserved. Thad Helsley Media produces not only podcasts for clients, but also custom videos, animations, and explainers for businesses, nonprofits, government, authors, and literally anyone that has a message or cause they want to promote. Contact us at any of the numbers in the liner notes. Thank you for your support.